Damien Foxall, Sustainability Program Manager, the 11th Hour Racing Team. We have Amy Monroe, Sustainability Officer again at the 11th Hour Racing Team. Isaac Murray, your very own Toolbox Community Manager. I think some of you have already been interacting with him directly, but indeed all three of us, along with Ingrid Butler from Butler International Sports Advisory, we're available if you need before or after the call. And again, thank you to Ingrid. I think you were just out in South Korea working with the NOC and the community out there. So again, we can help you in various ways. But today we're going to focus on steps 3 and 4. So without further ado, just go on to the next slide. And really the whole background of all of this, of course, is the UNFCCC Sports for Climate Action. And the principles outline, 5 key points really for us to focus on: systemic efforts, climate action, education, sustainable consumption, and communication. And we'll be looking at all of these today because as we think about our issues, typically they will relate to all of these principles in a different way. But I would draw your attention to 2 specific ones, of course, which would be systemic efforts, which by definition is, suggests that we should be looking at everything to understand where we're going to focus our efforts, and then educating for climate action. And I would suggest that this is as much about fact finding and listening to our stakeholders, both in and outside of our organization, as actually delivering new information to them. So in any case, on the next slide, we just kind of give a bigger kind of perspective. Sustainability cannot be pursued in isolation. By definition, it's an outward-looking approach that actively seeks input from both people inside and outside of your organization, as we've just said. And this requires a structured approach. There are many really, really useful tools and platforms out there for us to work on. ANOC themselves are providing an awful lot of information. The IOC Essentials Kit provides some very specific sports organizations, materials and guides through many of these processes. And then from a generic perspective, the Toolbox allows any organization to implement sustainability from start to finish. So I'm going to reintroduce Amy Monroe, and she'll just talk you through a little bit the Toolbox before we get into it.
Yeah, so just a reminder or an introduction, if this is your first workshop, the Toolbox platform can be found at www.sustainabilitytoolbox.com. And it was founded by 11th Hour Racing Team and our community in 2020, and it provides a set of guides, practical templates and case studies to walk you through a simple step-by-step process for creating a sustainability program. It's available for free on the Creative Commons platform based on the ethos that when we share, everyone wins. And the value of the Toolbox is in the community, is in all of you that create, use and maintain it. It is now available in English, French and Spanish, and we will be exploring some of the tools. So make sure you have registered. Isaac's provided the links there in the chat to the specific resources we'll be going through today. To dig into this in a little bit more detail, these are all of the assets that sit within the Toolbox. We're focusing today on steps 3 and 4, which you can see outlined there. In particular, 2 of the 4 in the lighter blue, so the stakeholder mapping and prioritization template, and then in step 4, the issues matrix template. And the outcome of today will be to address or to have an understanding of the topic of stakeholder engagement, and also an understanding of how to start identifying some of the key sustainability issues your organization might face. Feel free to drop any questions into the chat as we go through the session today, and I'll be collecting those up and posing those in the Q&A at the end. But for now, I'll hand back over to Isaac so that he can get into the detail.
Thanks a lot, Amy, and yeah, welcome back, everyone. It's really great to see all your faces back here again for session 2, where we'll be going into step 3 and 4. So kicking off the workshop, we will first be looking at step 3, and step 3 is all about stakeholder engagement. We can think of stakeholder engagement as a constant conversation with the individuals and entities that are connected to our NOCs. Our NOCs and federations interact with many different organizations, and to help reach our goals, we must communicate and work together to get there. Similarly, the Olympic Games as a whole takes many stakeholders to perform and make things happen and deliver on our objectives. So this image here is a little moment between Usain Bolt and one of the volunteers at London 2012. And I feel it encapsulates that kind of spirit of stakeholder engagement, in that all stakeholders must take account of one another, and they must align their aims to contribute to the wider goal. So in this case, the volunteer and Usain were both delivering the Olympic Games. In the case of our NOCs, it's delivering the Olympic movement in a sustainable way across all of our respective nations. So to get going, let's take a look at our quick guide, and these are available on the Toolbox platform as well. But these give like a brief overview of what you'll be doing in the step. So here the quick guide outlines the 4 activities that you'll be doing when you engage with your stakeholders. The first activity that you will do is to identify who those stakeholders are. So first we have to kind of understand what a stakeholder is. The definition here given is a stakeholder is a person or group that can be positively or negatively impacted or impact your projects, initiatives, policies, or organizations. So in this step, we'll be identifying who those groups or people or entities are, and then we'll prioritize them to know who we need to speak to first and how we will communicate with them, what ways we will do that. And then after that, we'll start to engage with our stakeholders and begin that dialogue where we can actually talk to them and have the discourse. And then we form an action plan of the conversations that we've had, ensuring that we are continuously communicating with our stakeholders throughout the whole sustainability program. And again, these quick guides are on our platform, so make sure you take a look at them before you jump into the step in full. Going on to the next slide, we have other resources available, of course. We have the how-to guides, case studies, and the 2 templates which we'll be coming on to shortly. Again, we have the Sustainability Handbook, which is on the ANOC website, and this aligns all of the templates and tools to the UNFCCC principles, and includes a more tailored version of those how-to guides as well. So looking a bit deeper into those templates at the bottom there, the template on the left is the stakeholder mapping template, and we'll be taking some practical action with that today. And the template is split into 4 different tabs. And these tabs will help you to map out and categorize all of your stakeholders. It will help you prioritize them by importance and by influence. You can also log your results from the stakeholder survey, and you'll be able to track engagements and conversations with your stakeholders. There's also a lists tab in that template where you can change and tailor the stakeholder map to your specific NOC. For example, you might want to define the criteria which you prioritize your stakeholders, and you also may want to change the names of your stakeholders as well. You'll see when we go into the map later that there are 2 small example sections, so you'll go into the list to change those group name headers there. A little bit more sort of abstract, this template should be used to paint a picture of who your entities are before you reach out to your stakeholders, with the survey template on the right. Your stakeholder map should then continue to evolve after you obtain your survey results, and as again you continuously interact and discover new things about your stakeholders as your sustainability program continues. So starting the conversation with those external stakeholders, you'll get feedback about your program and how you can impact and align with your stakeholders' interests. The stakeholder survey there on the right helps you to build up that profile of each stakeholder and explore the issues that they have and what their sustainability priorities are. In doing so, you'll be able to generate some ideas and think about initiatives which you will make to take action. Again, these tools are for you. They're not prescriptive, and we encourage you to tailor them in the best way to suit you. And both templates will contribute to the whole toolbox process, but particularly steps 4, 5, and 6, where we'll be outlining the scope of our targets and initiatives. Slide 11, please. So just like in the last workshop, when we start using these tools, we want to make sure that we're doing the most to meet the UNFCCC principles. UNFCCC principles. We have shown you here the most relevant principles to these templates and how the template relates to those principles. So in the main, the mapping stakeholders template gives you an aid to identify people in your network, of course, who can help you deliver on joint initiatives with. Because you're looking outward to the wider system in your network, this pertains directly to principle 1, as you're looking at that systemic change to promote greater environmental responsibility. When having this discourse, you have to define how you will engage each stakeholder on climate impacts and opportunities. So that might require some more additional resources, literature, or presentations to better educate your stakeholders. So that's where you'll be meeting principle 3. And one of the key things to note in terms of the UNFCCC principles is that NOCs have a unique role to play in delivering principle 5, because when you're identifying your stakeholders, you can identify potential ambassadors or leaders for the initiatives that will come to the fore. So these can be anyone from athletes on your Olympic sporting stage to professionals within the industry who can influence perhaps supply chain and that kind of thing. So principle 5 is really about looking for those key people who can help you communicate and help advocate for climate action. Similarly, the stakeholder survey can also be mapped against the UNFCCC principles. The survey is also imperative to meeting principle 1. So prioritizing your stakeholders can help you envisage which organization, which beneficiaries you can lean on to make partnerships and projects and campaigns with. So ranking them and figuring which ones are going to be the most important, which ones can get, in which ones you can find synergies with, and which ones you can better leverage change within that system, is again contributing to that undertaking systematic efforts to promote greater environmental responsibility. Principle 3 again invites you to share with your stakeholders the knowledge and research and discoveries that perhaps you made in steps 1 and 2 of the toolbox. Remember, step 1 and 2, we were assessing our starting point, assessing what sustainability means to us, and in using the stakeholder survey, you will be educating that, using that information that you've already sort of collected amongst your organization internally. For more in-depth detail on how to meet all of the principles, we have the handbook, of course, and on the back pages of that, we have how the templates directly link to the UNFCCC principles. So before we go into a bit of practical application, looking at the stakeholder map in detail, I'd like to explore this image with you. So a few of you might recognize what's going on here. This was the World Taekwondo demonstration at the ANOC Awards ceremony at the General Assembly. And I think this image really summarizes stakeholders supporting each other and working together in an interesting way. Because of course, as we all know, stakeholders, all they want to do is kick wood at you from 30 feet in the air. Of course they don't. But what I want us to get out of this image is that each of our stakeholders may have their own sustainability challenges, and they may require something different or different actions from you to meet. So let's say your sustainability program as a whole is the performance that the Taekwondo, World Taekwondo Federation did. Let's say it's that whole performance. Each initiative then is like smashing one of those wooden blocks. So for you, smashing one of those wooden blocks might be trying to balance your consumption and close the supply loop and make your supply chain circular. For other stakeholders, it might be that they're burning larger amounts of fossil fuels And once they make reductions in emissions, that's again smashing another wooden plank. Either way, it's about coming together and knowing who you can elevate and throw in the air to smash that wooden plank, and know when the time is right for them to elevate you to smash your wooden plank. So this way you're aligning your initiatives to reach your common goals, and each initiative feeds into that wider performance, that wider sustainability program. So I hope that paints a little bit more of a picture about why stakeholder engagement is important, and how we go about what the ends are to stakeholder engagement. So to work out how your stakeholders will come together, you'll first need to map them out, as we say. Next slide, please. And in a template, you'll find a map that kind of resembles this one here. The diversity of your stakeholders and their specific sustainability challenges will relate directly to the influence of your organization. So it's important to have a clear understanding of what their different functions are and how your different stakeholders contribute to your organization in different ways. After that, if we have time, you will use the prioritization tab to give a score of importance and influence to each stakeholder, and that's on the next slide. So when you're prioritizing your stakeholders, you will be using this scale and you'll be making a score about the interest of your stakeholder, how much they're interested in your sustainability program, and the influence that they have to make your sustainability program come to a success. And when you do so, you'll create coordinates, and these coordinates will help you to map out on this scale how you will communicate with your stakeholders. So for instance, if a stakeholder has a high influence on the success of your sustainability program, but they have little interest in it, they'll need to be satisfied. And satisfying your stakeholder means that they should continue to be satisfied throughout your sustainability program, and anything that you do shouldn't compromise their needs. The stakeholder with little interest or influence should be monitored. So if any potential opportunities to collaborate come, you can boost their score and they can become a more interested stakeholder. High interested stakeholders with little influence to leverage the change that you want should be kept informed so that they can take action with you when the time is right. And then we're going to manage the stakeholders. We're going to manage closely the stakeholders who are best placed to help you deliver your strategy. Those are the ones with the most interest and the most influence. And you should be in direct contact with these stakeholders to create the initiatives. So a lot of information, a lot of things to do, but right now what we kind of want you to do is, when we split into breakout rooms, we are going to take a look at the stakeholder mapping template, and we'd like you to categorize some of your stakeholders. And if you feel comfortable in what you're doing when you're categorizing them, maybe move on to the prioritization tab and see if you can have a go at prioritizing 2 or 3. And then what we want you to do is, while you're doing that, you can think about what you're discovering about your organization and how it interacts with others. And using the 5 questions on the right, you can think about if you've identified the right stakeholders. So have you identified people in your network who you can make those initiatives with? Are there key stakeholders relating to climate impacts and opportunities? Are there stakeholders which you will educate on climate impacts, or that can educate you? Does your stakeholder map identify key stakeholders in your value chain for sustainable, responsible consumption? And have you identified potential ambassadors or leaders to communicate your initiatives? So we're going to give you 15 minutes in these breakout rooms. Of course, there's going to be a facilitator in each. So if you're a little lost or you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask us. And yeah, we will go into those breakout rooms now. So 15 minutes, then we'll come back and have a chat about some of the stakeholders we identified. Cool. All right. I think we've got relatively everyone back in. So thank you for your contributions in those breakout rooms. Some really interesting questions. Of course, this is a very big task to undertake, but I hope that this breakout room gave us a little bit of a flavor of how we can prioritize and think about frame stakeholder engagement. So before we kick off and go into maybe the questions that we were thinking about earlier about around principles, I'm wondering if anybody has any interesting insights from that session.
I can give a quick start, if that's okay, Isaac.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah. So in our group, there was a little bit of a challenge trying to understand which stakeholder would fit under the different categories, if it was industry, if it was internal, or if it was external. So this discussion was quite interesting. First, because the NOCs, they are quite different from each other. They function differently. They are organized differently. But also in the end, I think it's depends on, I think there's no right and wrong answer, but how you face it and makes more sense to each one. And then you follow this line. That was our discussion.
Yeah, I think that was definitely a similar discussion in our group too, sort of asking what are the best ways to align to think about how we communicate. How do you know, what's the way you would recommend? And I think it's important to realize that everyone has their own contexts, and everybody has, like you say, every NOC works in a completely different way. So some might have hundreds of staff, some might have more single figures levels of staff. So it's really down to you to decide what the best methods of communication would be. And, you know, I guess there's social and cultural differences in there too that, you know, only you can be aware of how the best way to communicate are. So yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely something we should bear in mind. Did anybody manage to identify, did anybody have any interesting stakeholder groups that they identified?
If I may, Isaac, we had an interesting example from Qatar. Maybe if you can share that, Fahad Juma, please.
Yes,
he's on the call.
Thank you, Ingrid, and hi, Isaac, and everyone. Yeah, we were talking about the, you know, part of the important stakeholders are the partners, you know, and strategic partners and sponsors that we actually work with. They have a very strong leverage on sustainability, either directly or indirectly. So one of our you know, engagement was with the first sustainable town in Qatar, in Doha. It named Msheireb. It was renovated and it was from a very old place in Qatar, and it was built around you know, all the sustainability elements. So what we did is that actually we signed a partnership agreement with them that enabled us to use their venues and facilities for our you know town halls, you know, our events, certain kind of, we have the Excellence Day Award, where we actually after, you know, like every year we go and we acknowledge and recognize, you know, the athletes, the organizations that actually supported us during you know, the past year. So we do that on that venue. And we by doing that also, we just give an actual example, you know, a living example, how we can translate sustainability from the documents, from the templates, from the you know, the ideas into something that people actually can experience on the ground. So this is one of the examples that we actually worked with one of our partners. And in addition to that, we also made sure that sustainability become one of the main pillars in all the future partnership and sponsorship agreements. Even recently, we did sign an agreement with one of the clothing companies that they use the Olympic emblems and the brand of Qatar. And this company, actually, it's a local company that use recycled and organic materials to produce their clothes. So even our brand is now, when it comes to clothing and merchandising, is also associated with sustainable and environmental friendly products and companies as well. So these are the steps that we're trying to do, and eventually spread this philosophy of work, not become just an agreement. It's become actually a way of doing business and a way of conducting sporting event and sporting practices in Qatar, and hopefully in the region as well. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a fantastic example of how stakeholder engagement can come to bolster your sustainability efforts and really reach beyond the initial vision of a sporting event. I think that when you speak to that living example of sustainability, you integrating something, you're showing your audiences and showing your stakeholders, all stakeholders, suppliers as well, what that might look like. I mean, that initiative that you spoke about, it hits principle 1, making systemic change. It hits principle 3 because you're educating people on the opportunities that can be, educating people on what's already happening, and also principle 5 as well, because you found that ambassador for sustainability who can help you communicate your message. So that initiative in itself, really shows how engaging with your stakeholders can make that change. And the fact that sustainability is also a pillar in your supply chain as well, that's something that will come in the toolbox process. We'll come on to in step 6, creating a sustainable sourcing code to help you, change suppliers or help you assist your suppliers in making changes to become more sustainable and more regenerative in their practices. So excellent feedback. Good to hear that there's already things undergoing. We're going to move on to step 4 now, so that we can keep in time, so that we have to have time for questions at the end. But step 4 is all about identifying the issues. So in the quick guide, which we'll come on to shortly, the IOC says that determining the scope of your sustainability program should ultimately be about the things that you either have control or strong influence over. So today we must remember that through this process, tackling issues isn't about ticking all of the SDG boxes. It's about utilizing our place as a player in the wider system and using what we have control or strong influence over to make change, not trying to hit everything and make everything great. So this rowing team here, they obviously need more than one person to lend a hand to reach the finish line. In fact, it needs a team of people rowing on the left, a team of people rowing on the right, cocks to help you keep direction, and then a whole team of people behind the boat, like a physio, a coach, onshore to help the boat reach its destination as the first place across the finish line. So each of these people in the team use their skills and their knowledge and accountability for the remits that they work in to either influence or control what they do to the greater objective, which in this case would be winning the race. So if we're thinking about being part of systemic change across the world, what we need to think about is how can our NOC best lend its hand to reaching that finish line of becoming more sustainable and having more sustainable practices across the world. So after talking with your stakeholders and understanding that emerging approach, it's time to outline what those issues are for your organization. So again, the quick guide here includes the UN Sustainable Development Goals as a reference, and then within that graphic sits examples of different organizational activities to help you consider how they may impact the delivery of the goals. So if you take each segment and link it up to each segment on the inside and link it up to the segments on the outside, that's a good way of framing what issues could be resulting of your activities. So before we go into the 6 different activities that we'll do when we examine our issues, we just want to say that it's really about how you can best leverage change and not about trying to hit all of these. You can think about the issues that are there, but which ones do you have direct control over and which ones do you have influence over? Next slide, please. So again, alongside the quick guide, we have a host of other resources, the how-to guides, case studies, and again, in the handbook, we have more detailed information on how these pertain to UNFCCC principles. We have the issues matrix, which we'll go on to shortly, and we also have the legal obligations register. And these are the two templates you will find to help you examine your issues. In the issues matrix, again, a very sort of heady template, but the bottom line of it is that you will be able to review your organization's activities and then identify the risks and the opportunities pertaining to those activities, including information that you obtain from your stakeholders in step 1 and 3. Sounds quite intense, but it's a lot easier than you think when you actually see the process. You'll also add research on the relevant issues that have been tackled by your peers. So, for example, if you're doing research as to what other NOCs, which other NOCs are, which other standards NOCs are trying to hit, which other certifications NOCs might be trying to hit, you can include those and incorporate those into your issues matrix. And of course, you'll compile and prioritize the issues that are in the matrix. The legal obligations register is basically where we will be able to record the legislation and the regulations that our organization should adhere to. So this isn't issues, these are just things that you must do in order to be a legally obliging organization. And you can also record any instances of non-compliance and make plans as to how to change the situation. So, delivering on UNFCCC principles. Well, by its very nature, the issues matrix will help you achieve all of the principles, as you'll be finding issues that pertain to each of the 5 principles within your investigation. So you can also use the 5 principles as a frame for your issues. I suggest you use different standards, certifications, SDGs, UNFCCC principles. These could all help you frame what issues are coming from your activities, or which issues are coming from your activities. Similarly, the legal obligations register, you'll also be adhering to, next slide, please, that's it. Yeah, in the legal obligations register, you'll adhere to ISO standard procedures and include all sector-specific national and international requirements to reduce your climate impact and meet baselines for being a sustainable and regenerative organization. So, next, we're going to make some practical application with the issues matrix and have a look at how to use that. But before we do, just a quick analogy to frame, how and why we look at issues in this way. So in sport, if you're a physio, depending on the sport that your patient plays, you'll pay special focus onto different parts of the body, as they're more important to perform in that sport. So which muscles do you risk pulling if you're throwing the discus? Which joints need exercising if you're doing the 1,000-meter relay? Similarly, depending on the activities that we do in our NOCs, we can prioritize and assess what the most important areas are to focus on and what we have influence on and what we have direct control over to make sure that we can finish the race and that we can perform to the best of our ability. So now we're going to split into breakout rooms again and take a little look at the issues matrix. We're going to try and maybe go for 10 minutes for this one, just so that we stay on time. And we'd just like you to look at the issues matrix and think about 3 activities in your organization, and then map them and map out some of the economic, social, and environmental issues that come from those activities. Again, you can use the questions on the right to help you as a guide. These were in the email too. And these, again, stay in line with UNFCCC activities. So we'll go into the breakout rooms. If you need more help, any more questions, again, facilitators will be on hand to answer them. And we will see you at 2 o'clock or just over. Okay, I think we have all of our participants back. So we will just go into a little bit of a reflection on what we found out in those breakout rooms. Again, thank you for all your contribution. Thanks for your participation. It would be great to hear if anybody's had any golden moments through using that. Damien, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I would like to put forward Lucas from the Brazilian NOC. if you would just describe a little bit the challenges when they did their internal assessment.
Hello, guys.
If you're
Sorry, Damon, I didn't listen.
Yeah, Lucas, if you wouldn't mind just sharing how you know, the assessment you did an issues, materiality assessment internally, and then the sort of the difference of perspective around the assessment of, you know, risk and also the opportunities when we start talking about implementing a sustainability program. You know, everyone wants to do something, but there are risks associated with that, credibility. Do you want to just talk to how those conversations went for you guys?
Yeah. Hello, guys. I'm Lucas. I'm the sustainability manager in the Brazil Olympic Committee, and we were talking about in the other room some risks and some opportunities, and we created recently an internal commission with the members of the different divisions inside our organization. And I was mentioning some examples of some good experiences and something that we are learning with these different members. So we have some members of marketing section, headquarter administration, you know, to move forward in different topics, especially what we are working at this time, such as the climate action, sports and climate action, and reducing of greenhouse gases. We are doing our relatories right now. And yeah, especially in the market sections, we face some resistance, and we created some opportunities with new sponsors as well. And I was mentioning this for them and the other colleagues in the other room.
Yeah, just to add maybe a bit of perspective to that. So, you know, really on one hand, obviously a lot of key stakeholders like the partners that were mentioned, Isaac, in Qatar by Fahad, you know, partners and stakeholders key, you know, with high influence and high interest, looking for a change and looking for action. And then, of course, you know, people very rightly so, you know, marketing department going, okay, you know, but this is all great, but what are the risks associated with this? And, you know, the making sure that, you know, maybe action comes first and the communication of actions and challenges comes afterwards. But again, you're just finding the right balance. And I guess, you know, any one of these, when we think about issues, again, there's two sides to it, right? One is the risk and the other one is the opportunity. But I thought that was a very transparent and a really great message. Thanks, Lucas.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, yeah, one of the things I took away from that as well is that, you know, you created that internal commission, which where effectively, you know, you're engaging in that continuous communication with your stakeholders. You know, these tools and this process isn't meant to be done in solace. You have to definitely lean on other departments and make sure you're working across the different departments or the different silos of your organization to hear everyone's voice and to make sure that, you know, what the issues you're going to tackle are going to work. Or make sure that you've really identified the risks and the opportunities that are present there. So yeah, definitely a good example of how to work around those issues and that kind of thing. I think we are still a little bit behind on time, or maybe we have time for, oh no, we should move on to our little anecdote for today. So what we want to do and continue to do in these workshops is to have somebody speak a little bit to how they've successfully gone through some of these steps. So today we have Mabel Roca from Argentina discussing how they've kind of gone through the process of stakeholder engagement and how that sort of helped their sustainability program come to fruition. So yeah, if you would like to take it away, Mabel, I think we're ready to hear another example of how this can work. Is Mabel on the call?
Primero que todo, muchas gracias por darme la posibilidad de Well, first of all, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share our experience with all of you. As you can see on the screen, our logo. First of all, we wanted to ensure that our logo would reflect a common identity for all of us, and especially in terms of the topic, which is sustainability. In 2017, firstly, we established our starting point, and the objective here is precisely to promote projects which will raise awareness and innovation using sport as a strategic tool for promotion and sustainable development and the care of the environment. So we tried to design a logo that would identify us with one motto, that is, sport cares for the environment. Fundamentally, that was the first thing we sat down to think about. As from there, now, thinking about what we've been discussing this morning, we thought about our interested parties. Next slide, please. There you go. So all of what you see on the screen was thanks to the solidarity of the International Olympic Committee and ANOC. We submitted our first project to ANOC for 2017-2018. The idea was to try to train people on the basis of knowledge. We wanted to call the national federations to set up a database. They were our first interested party, and to offer training courses on the Sustainable Development Goals and other agreements signed by the International Olympic Committee regarding this topic, agreement signed with the United Nations. Then we launched a raising awareness campaign. Here we summoned a number of athletes to generate our community for sustainable development. We summoned young children, girls and boys, teenagers from schools, and also athletes in clubs and federations. And also this year, we brought on board, we actually launched also a campaign for drawing and sports. We also began to work on the COA environmental seal. I think I mentioned this in our first webinar. The aim of the COA environmental seal, the objective isn't to reach an ISO certification, but to help our federations and other sporting institutions to make that first step, trying to acquire this COA environmental seal. In order to obtain this, you need 3 steps. First of all, 6 training courses on environmental sustainability. This is something that we created as a best practices manual. A second step, which has to do with submitting projects. People who participated submitted their projects in the framework, of course, of their own institutions. We'd signed agreements with the various institutions for this. And this was, in fact, an opportunity, but also a risk that we had to take, because the people who came to our training courses belonged to institutions, and of course, the institutions themselves had to take the decision to come on board. And then the third step, to actually develop this COA environmental seal in order to later on be awarded this seal. So these were our interested parties in the very first step. So institutions, athletes, children and teenagers from school and sporting clubs, and then federations. Federations, of course, have to come on board. They want to reduce the CO2 emissions and their carbon footprint. That's absolutely fundamental. Perhaps we can move on to the next slide. I've got a couple of videos here. I'm not sure we have time to show them, but these were our interested parties, our athletes. They created a video where they illustrated a sustainable activity. The pandemic had a lot to do with it. Then, of course, children, the guardians of the COA planet. And now we have the writing and drawing contest with participation of school children from all over the country. They identify themselves with sustainability of the planet, and they will be receiving awards and certificates next Monday in a ceremony that we've organized. And the COA environmental seal, you've got the detail here on the screen. You can see here some of the drawings that received an award, a prize, and the sculptures that have to do with sustainable development. These were made by secondary school students who are doing art in the city of Buenos Aires, drawing inspiration from the central topic, which is sustainability, caring for the planet, the environment. And many of these sculptures are still unfinished. They'll be finished by next Monday when the award ceremony takes place. And just a few more details on the COA environmental seal. This is the most robust tool that we have at our disposal right now. For 3 months, we held these training courses. Our environmental seal is up on our website for everybody to see. And the most important topics that we've looked at over these 3 months, environmental management in sports, sports facilities, waste management, management of the purchase of goods and services, our carbon footprint within sports activities, communication, and sustainable marketing. Each participant had to present his or her project from his or her institution. The project was then evaluated, and once any minor changes were made, the institution is responsible for sending in a commitment letter backing that person to carry out the project. Now, once all of this is set up, there's also a team on methodology who does surveillance on launching the project to ensure that then the award can be given. This award, which is called the COA Environmental Seal. So that's basically all I had to say, but I do want to add one final note from Victor Hugo. Mightier than the passing of fearsome armies, it is an idea whose time has come. And that's the quote from Victor Hugo. I think the time has come for all of us to take care of the planet. Thank you very much. And if we have time to show any of the videos, that would be great. And if not, that's fine. Also, I don't want to delay this webinar. So thank you all once again for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mabel. That was a very brilliant and comprehensive outline of your sustainability program. Again, you've kind of gone into all the 5 principles, undertaking systematic change through this award, but also advocating for climate, communicating about climate, and educating about climate. So that is, a perfect example of how you can reach out to your stakeholders, find the issues, and make some initiatives to help tackle them. So thank you for sharing. Before we move on to the Q&A, we'll just take a little round off of what we've looked at today. So we've looked at our stakeholder template to identify and prioritize our stakeholders and discover the best way that we will communicate with them to create initiatives. We've begun to make some practice on reviewing the development issues pertinent to our NOCs using the issues matrix. We've heard some wonderful examples from Argentina's NOC, which I'm sure if you would like to get in touch with Mabel for any further questions, I'm sure she'd be happy to speak about it further. And yes, we will share this presentation with the videos in too. I've had a look at them myself. There are some really good videos in there and some inspirational stuff. And lastly, we've reflected on all of these processes using the UNFCCC principles. Again, if you haven't signed up, you can speak to Andres and Gustavo about how that might be able to come about. But for now, I will leave you with Amy, and we can start the question and answer session, which we have 10 minutes or so left for.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thank you so much for everyone's contributions. That was a fantastic session. Yeah, please feel free to ask any questions or provide any contributions if you didn't get any time to in the breakout sessions. This is your opportunity. Go ahead, Leonardo.
Hello, my comment, hello everyone, sorry. My comment is just to congratulate this last part. Mabel just presented this to us, an action that she took associated with this personal area. Normally, we attend a lot of meetings online and workshops, and normally we don't stay too connected with real actions that are being put in place. So I would just recommend just to do this more often. I was really glad to hear our presentation. I've been pushing forward with the IOC actually to make more NOC exchange experiences for us to see and benchmark other actions that are being taken place. So Gustavo, this is also something for you to take notice for future events that ANOC could make and should make, just for us to see this type of presentations, because I just learned a lot of things that are putting in place, and some of them are real simple. And normally we have some difficulties integrating culture with sports. So this was a triangular approach with culture, sports, and also sustainability. So this was a very good example. I just wanted to make this recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leonardo. That's fantastic. And I think we agree. I think there's so much value to having real life examples, and we're going to include one in every workshop. So if you particularly want to share how you have gone about any one of the steps, then please get in touch, and we'd love to feature and hear from you guys. So yes, that would be great. Go ahead, Damien.
Yeah, I'm going to leave space for other questions, but I'd really want to echo Amy's point there, and Leonardo. This is hugely valuable to provide this platform to all of you, and for us to listen to you, because for me, that's the education. It's the listening. It's the listening to others. And so the next workshop is on the 11th of January, I believe, or at least sometime in the middle of January. And the next workshop will be steps 5 and 6. So setting targets and implementing the sustainability plan. And so if anyone on the call or anyone would like to be showcased and to give us 5, 6, 7 minutes of your journey, that would be great. Please reach out to Gustavo and he'll set that up with us.
Thanks, Damien. Ingrid, did you have any reflections or comments to share from your groups or beyond?
Thank you, Amy. We had a good discussion with regards to the order of identifying the issues, whether you first speak with your stakeholders that you've identified in step 3, and then you do the survey, and then you go through the process of identifying the issues, just to get the order right, because I think it's in your dialogue with your stakeholders that you can refine which issues to focus on, given that sustainability is such a big and broad topic, and every country, every region is different. So it may be through that stakeholder engagement process that you clarify a little bit the priority issues as well. Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And there is also in the thank you for showing that. There's also a section in the issues matrix where you can then actually rate the issue with the importance and significance to your stakeholders, so you can bring that information back into how you prioritize as well. So fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's just in terms of the order. I think it is important to allow the stakeholder survey and allow the discoveries you've made in the first 3 steps to inform what those issues are. but then using the lens of the SDGs and using the lens of your whichever research you've done around different standards and different certifications to form those issues. So yeah, the issue stage is after you've done all your research and you're trying to bring everything together. But yeah, next question.
And I think stakeholder engagement informs us at all stages of the process, really is something worth remembering. Yeah, and any more questions at all? Is that a new raised hand, Damien, or an old raised hand?
It's a new one. I'd just like to, again, congratulate Mabel and the Argentinian NOC. I'm really, really very impressed with the internal seal standard that they created. And again, it's just a great example. You know, at the end of the day, sometimes just simple and just getting things done is the way to go. And you know what, we all recognize the need for robust, credible international standards, such as ISO standards. But sometimes, you know, just taking the simple approach, and everything doesn't have to be perfect. But obviously what they were trying to do was initiate and incentivize action, and to have some sort of credible or sort of consistent way to recognize the various actions from their various federations. It's really brilliant. Well done.
And I think that's bringing us near to the end. So Damien, did you have any other words of wrap up before we go to Gustavo for
yeah, well, I mean, excellent session. I really feel like we're on a roll. So thank you all for joining. And please reach out to your neighboring NOCs if they weren't on the call or haven't yet joined. So, you know, as we leave this session, we should have the confidence and the tools to reach out to our stakeholders in more detail and to define the issues that really are key to your organization. Defining what is important to your organization is fundamentally about making choices, or as I say, if everything is important, then ultimately nothing really gets done well. So again, you know, we need to lay out all of these issues and then make some clear choices as to what is important. The next workshop is on the 11th of January, 2023, next year, and we'll move into the next steps, setting targets, and planning action. So really rolling up our sleeves and getting the work done. In the meantime, the PowerPoint will be available from this session and on the ANOC website. And yeah, I'll just hand over to Gustavo until next year. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. No, I just want to take the opportunity to thank the team from the Toolbox and also all of the participant NOCs. Saving the planet is a lot of work, but we all have our share of responsibility. And we believe that with this work that we have with the Toolbox, we are facilitating this roadmap for the NOCs to do their part. And also the Toolbox itself is a community, and ANOC is also a community of NOCs. And thank you for Leonardo for pushing this for us to promote more exchange between the NOCs. This is one of the things that we are concerned about and thinking on how we can do better on this point. And this is the start, but I think it's a good start and a very important one. And so thank you again for participating. As Andres sent on the message, we ask you all to turn on your camera. We're going to take a group photo for this moment. And that's it. Thank you very much. Happy end of the year. See you in 2023. Let's open our cameras for the photo. Put on a good smile. Good. Are we good, Andres?
Have you done in my face?
Are we good, Andres? Otherwise, we'll all be smiling here like crazy. And okay, I assume it's good. So thank you very much, guys. See you soon. Thank you. Thanks again.